Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for indulging us. It's a little past 6. We wanted to give others an opportunity to get here. And of course, now since we have a lot of seats up front, when they get here, they just have to come sit up front. So to get started, we're going to ask Pastor Sparrow to come and just give us an invocation, if you don't mind.
I had to look behind me and see all the folks that are here. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. Okay, great. I've been asked by Sage to open us up. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day and all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. We thank you for everyone who is in attendance on this evening. We thank you for those who will be presented, and give us an understanding of the material that will be presented to us. We thank you for this time together. In Christ's name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor. He's somewhat modest, but he is the pastor of Corinth Baptist Church, but also chairs the Eastside Advisory Council. And so we thank you for coming and being here. To all of you that's here today, we want to thank you for being here. My name is Russell Leday. I serve as the Chief Financial and Operations Officer for SAGE, which is San Antonio for Growth on the East Side. So we're very excited today to hear some information that some of you participated in the discussions and deliberations. But before we get to that, I just want to share a few things about SAGE. Our mission at SAGE is to champion investments that improves the quality of life for individuals, families, neighborhoods, and businesses on San Antonio's East Side. So that covers all of District 2 and a sliver of District 3. Everything we do is focused on that. Our vision. We envision the East Side as a flourishing and sustainable community with diverse and engaged neighborhoods and vibrant existing destinations. The East Side is a great place to be. And if you didn't know, time tonight is over, you will be convinced. Our values are to advocate for efficient, sustainable growth for San Antonio's East Side, advance small business development, maintain and promote the area's history and culture, provide innovative, progressive solutions to East Side's challenges. So, some of the things that we are involved in, we have historical markers, a significant markers project that we've got going. And we hope to unveil some of those markers within the next month, during the month of March. So please be on the lookout for that and come. As we celebrate Black History Month, these historical markers will be a tribute to Black businesses that once flourished on the East Side of San Antonio. So we want anyone who comes to visit San Antonio to understand the history and be able to see that visual history. The other program that we've got going is the Texas HAP program. And I'm going to ask Lindsay Logan, who's our Community Relations Manager and Programs with the Lindsay Logan, to come and talk a little bit about the Texas HAP program.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. So there's a flyer on your desk, on your chair, excuse me. This program is an excellent program, so if it doesn't pertain to you, just please make sure you pass the message before the funding is gone. There's currently about $300 million left to spend. The only qualifications are that you're a homeowner and that you have missed a payment. Somebody asked, well, how far back did I have to miss a payment? If you missed the deadline payment, that's considered delinquent. So the 5 categories that we can assist you on are mortgage, utilities, property taxes that were due January 31st, homeowners insurance, and HOA fees if you live in an HOA. So please don't hesitate to reach out or pass the information to a friend or family. This is a great program that we can really help you out. I think the biggest thing right now is the mortgage, utilities, and property taxes, and we're seeing high amounts. I tell people, swallow your pride. This is the program to help you out. Do not take advantage of this. We've all gone through some things. It is what it is. Look forward to hearing from y'all.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. And we have a satellite office over at the Etsy. So you can call our number, but extension 130 to get an appointment. Or you can stop by the Etsy and we have a team of persons that will be able to assist you. So before we have our presenter to come, just a couple of things. I want to acknowledge members of city staff. Any city staff, if you just stand and be recognized. David? Outstanding. Thank you all so much for being here. Gladys from Economic Development, David from Neighborhood Housing. And Gladys right there, okay. Very well. Thank you guys so much for coming and sharing with us today and to hear what information that we are all kind of looking forward to hear. As I stated earlier, today marks the end of Black History, at least this official celebration period. But it lasts all year long because as long as there are Black people doing things, history is being made. And when you recognize that many things that you come in contact with, you don't recognize, or maybe not recognize, that Black people had something to do with it. So I think about, well, what would the world be like if we didn't have Black people? Well, let me help you a little bit. You probably wouldn't be able to iron because the ironing board was invented by a Black person, Sarah Boone. Well, you might have problems combing your hair or brushing your hair. Both of those were invented by Black people, Walter Salmons and Lydia Newman. Well, everybody probably have heard of Madam C.J. Walker, first Black millionaire, and made her fortune on hair products and the curling iron. Well, if you wash clothes and didn't have to hang them on the line, but you used the dryer, well, we might want to thank Black man George Salmon, who invented the clothes dryer. And the facts just go on and on and on. So this is why it's so important for us to celebrate diversity. We all have something to contribute to the success of our community. So we're here tonight to get information on how we can continue to work together to make our community even better. This week is also Black Restaurant Week. So you gotta eat. So why not go to one of the Black restaurants and those Black restaurants that's participating in the program, $1 from the meal that you purchase will go to the San Antonio Food Bank. In addition to that, the David Robinson Foundation will contribute an additional $2 to the San Antonio Food Bank. So let's support them, and we have several Black-owned restaurants on the Eastside, and so please, this goes until March 5th, so come on out and support that. So at this time, I'm going to bring up Mariela Bazoon, who is our Chief Innovation and Technology Officer for SAGE. and she will introduce our guest. Marty served as the coordinator basically for this particular project. So we'll give her this opportunity to come and introduce our guest.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to come out here for us to spend some time together, think together, converse together. So we can talk about corridor revitalization and economic development strategies for East San Antonio. Like Russell said, my name is Mariela Ozuna. I'm the Chief Innovation and Technology Officer at San Antonio for Growth on the East Side. Before I introduce Matt, who's Matt, but I wanted to take a moment to thank individually all the folks and community members that participated in the year-long process that you're about to see the culmination of some of that community input. But specifically, a year ago, we convened a strategy and advisory committee made up of Greater SATX, Ashley Gostin and team, West Care of Texas, Beverly Watts Davis, City Council District 2 office, specifically Denise Hernandez and Sadell Brooks, Texas Research and Technology Foundation, Mr. Randy Herrig, Spurs Sports and Entertainment, Tyler Caldwell, Willie Burrows, formerly of SAISD, now with the Council of Great City Schools, the City of San Antonio Transportation Department, Tamika Montreville, the National Association of Latino Community Asset Builders, NALCAB, Ms. Storm Talifero, the RK Group, Jamie Kowalski, and our SAGE Board of Directors and our SAGE staff, represented by our board chair, Ms. Michaela Schmidt. And we're also grateful for the input from the folks who either participated in interviews or provided information to our research partners, who you're gonna hear from here in just a moment. But special thanks to St. Paul Square, Lisa Hernandez, Pulp Coffee, Mr. James Mireles, Calienta Hot Glass, Ruth Bushman, Terramark, John Cooley and Scott Price, the Gusto Group, which you might know from Toro and Quiche, Gerardo de Anda, Filters for Air, David Dilling, and Rockbox, Michelle Garza Rodriguez. Also, we want to take a moment to really extend our gratitude for the funding that this study was made possible by the Inner City TERS. So, wanted to point out that there was a lot of input and community participation that brought us here today. And that community and input and participation is not over. So thank you for joining us so that we can continue that dialogue. I'm happy to introduce my friend Matt Prosser from Economic and Planning Systems. They're the research contractor that led us through this years-long study, and he's gonna walk us through a presentation tonight.
I need to move around when I'm talking, so I'll grab the mic out. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. Again, I'm Matt Prosser. I work with a firm called Economic and Planning Systems. We're a land use economics firm that does a variety of work, from community and economic developments all the way sort of affordable housing policy, economic impact studies. And I personally have been working a lot in San Antonio. I've been working here for over a decade now on various projects, including several efforts with the city related to SA Tomorrow. And so this work is really the extension of some work that various studies that we've been doing to support sort of the growth of the community. And so really excited to present what we have, at least in draft form, to you all tonight. So as you can see on the screen, we've been tasked with developing a corridor revitalization and economic development strategy. And really what we're hoping to do is provide some guidance and direction to SAGE in terms of how they can best build the Eastside community, both from an economic perspective, but also from a social perspective. So really what I'm going to do is share with you a little bit of the process that we went through, a little bit of sort of our background findings, but more sort of unveiling some of the strategies and actions that we're proposing, and really hoping to get your thoughts and feedback on that as well as any expressions of interest in terms of partnering and helping to expand the efforts. I see a hand in the back.
Will the public receive a draft copy of the presentation?
Yes,
We can email it.
Yes.
You should have everyone's email.
okay, yeah. I believe there's sign-up sheets in the back, so if you provide your email there, you'll get a copy. So really, hoping to have a little bit of a dialogue about how some of these strategies might work with other efforts that are going on currently within the East Side and in the city. So our project really started with some key questions in terms of understanding what are the opportunities for attracting investments and economic opportunity to the East Side. And really, how do we take advantage and prioritize those opportunities, and how can we use some tools to help fund them? And so to do this, we sort of have 3 steps. We did an existing conditions analysis, kind of an analysis of the data around the conditions on the East Side. We did outreach and engagement. We had a stakeholder committee, as Mariella described, as well as we did tried to do a fair amount of individual interviews with business owners and the like on the East Side to get input. And then really distilled that all down into a SWOT analysis, kind of to identify our opportunities and threats. And ultimately, those analyses led the development of a strategy or an action plan, which is what we're mainly presenting tonight. So in terms of study areas, this map is a little bit busy and hard to see, but really we are looking primarily at kind of 3 areas. First was what is defined as sort of the East Side by the City of San Antonio's community area planning process. We also looked at the East Side Promise Zone boundaries, as well as a larger sort of all-encompassing East Side of San Antonio boundary to set the context of how different areas are different and really to help us understand where we need to prioritize investments and actions. I mentioned outreach to local business owners, property owners, some developers active in the area, as well as the strategy committee that had a number of stakeholders. So in terms of existing conditions, we really focused on kind of understanding what sort of historically has occurred on the East Side and what's changing or not. So as many of you know, the East Side has been sort of a historically disenfranchised area. We have residents that have traditionally had lower than average incomes, lower than average educational attainment, and have generally had lower access to employment opportunities, despite the fact that we're next to, Fort Sam and downtown and some large employment areas. And so what we've seen is that, those conditions still persist today, but there are changes. We're seeing improvements in the average incomes of residents in the area, as well as the educational attainment areas, but we're still not quite to the city average or where perhaps we'd want to be. And access to employment is still a challenge. We still have these great economic engines on our edges of the East Side, but we're not leveraging those opportunities really for the residents of the East Side as they come of age. And how can we improve that is really something we've been a lot of thinking about. We know the East Side is historically been a very diverse community. Obviously, it has its roots as sort of the predominantly Black African American area within the city of San Antonio. A lot of that stemming from, even all the way back to sort of slave trade and segregation policies, and then into sort of more contemporary redlining policies that have really concentrated that community in this area. And so that diversity luckily still continues today. It's still a very diverse community. And when we started looking at some of the recent changes in the demographic makeup of the community, it has stayed relatively the same, which we think is a positive thing, especially as we start to see some of those income and educational attainment rates increase. And that's really an aspiration, I think, is to continue the diversity of this area going forward, and how do we create opportunity for all. And then lastly, the East Side has historically lacked investment, and I've mentioned that some of those sort of historic policies that have lingering effects in terms of attraction of investment into the area. And that was really the focus of a lot of what SAGE has been doing in the last 5 to 10 years, especially their last strategic plan that was related to sort of this corridor revitalization. It was all about how can we get people to come invest on the east side. And what we've seen since that, and it was around 2015, 2016, is there has started to be a fair amount of investment now. We're seeing new homes, just around us. And so we're starting to actually see some of the progress that the community and leaders have been hoping for. And so I really think the challenge now is ensuring that the new investment and the changes in the east side are benefiting the folks that have been here historically, and creating benefits and opportunities for them as opposed to perhaps for new residents to the east side. And so really that we're not quite sure where that benefit is going now. And so we want to work to try to address that, measure that, and understand how some of the strategies SAGE can implement can ensure the benefits are reaching the folks that have lived here. So we took all that data analysis and the input from our outreach efforts, and we kind of condensed that down into this nerdy term SWOT analysis, which is really kind of an assessment of some of the strengths and weaknesses of the community, as well as opportunities and threats. And so really having this help guide some of the strategies that we needed to develop. So in terms of strengths, I mentioned the east side is well positioned in terms of its proximity to major employment centers. Its central location in San Antonio is also becoming more and more an attractive asset. Obviously, we have a rich and diverse cultural history and lingering diversity, which is very attractive and something we want to maintain. And what we found over the process is there's a number of really great anchor institutions within the east side. They've been doing a lot of wonderful efforts. We're in a facility now as one of these anchor assets, the Ella Austin Center. It's trying to address some of the challenges that we've identified. And so what we really started to do is think about how do we build on these anchor assets as being really a strength and also an opportunity going forward. And then another thing that we found through some of our outreach to local businesses is the east side is a little more accessible in terms of the ability to start a business. There's a lower cost space, there's a variety of older space that may not be attractive to some larger businesses, but for new small businesses there's opportunity in those lower cost spaces. And that's an attribute that we thought could create another opportunity as well. In terms of weaknesses, we have infrastructure that's lacked in reinvestment for several decades, and so addressing things like roads and sidewalks and sewer and water, those are things that we need to direct investment back to the east side for. There is a sort of diverse availability of land opportunities. The east side's, at least especially the core neighborhoods, are fairly built out. And so what we have is sort of granular spots of vacant lots, and how you incent change on those more dispersed properties is a little more challenging, but it also is, I think, a benefit in terms of being able to manage and control the change that comes into a neighborhood. And then obviously what we talked about just a minute ago was this lack of access to capital, lack of investment, and that's starting to change. And so we have an opportunity to leverage that renewed investment on the east side. So in terms of opportunities, we have spaces that are available for businesses. We're seeing new investment and interest in the east side. And we're starting to see some more incremental change as opposed to sort of large scale change, which is something that can help us go forward in terms of creating the future sort of economic opportunities on the east side that the community desires. But there are threats. We have concerns, and we've heard from several people about the lack of the community's voice in new development, and how do we ensure the folks that are living here are helping to shape the future of the area. And partly that's due from outside investing coming in. There are a variety. Oh, I don't know why I keep cutting in and out, but maybe because I'm moving around so much. there are some negative perceptions of the area, and that's pretty varied. You think that one would be better? All right. We'll see if this is better, or maybe I'll just stop moving around so much. So these negative perceptions are, like I said, varied. There are perceptions about safety and crime on the east side that can deter investment, deter people from visiting businesses on the east side. And then there's also perceptions that there aren't opportunities on the east side, or we're fully built out, so there's nowhere to invest. And that's, obviously not the truth. And so trying to attacking perceptions, I'll step forward, maybe that'll help, is something that we found that is needed. And then lastly, in terms of that, it's just ensuring that there's community buy-in and trust in terms of the changes that are going on. There's been, honestly, probably a ton of plans and folks like me that have come in and sold some big shiny ideas, and they've never really materialized. And so that can be frustrating for the community. And so what we're hoping to do is to set a framework for how Sage can sort of incrementally grow its reach and the types of services that it provides. And so sort of from a grassroots standpoint, or more sort of from a bottom-up standpoint, sort of build different avenues for opportunity within the community, as opposed to one big shiny object that might change the trajectory of the east side. So, with all of that input that we've received, we developed 3 guiding themes to help really us organize our ideas and our actions and strategies. And so the first one is to leverage the anchor institutions and assets that are on the east side and businesses. And so working with what we've got now, let's build on those. The second one is investing in areas for businesses to locate and grow. So how do we make sure we have places and spaces for new businesses or existing businesses to continue to flourish? And then lastly, I think this is a really important one in terms of the work we've been doing in similar communities elsewhere in the US, is that there needs to be an ownership of the change that's occurring in neighborhoods, especially ones that are diverse as this one and have had that sort of historic disinvestment, if you will. And so making sure that the new economic opportunities that are coming in are something that the community has ownership over and able to leverage the benefits of that investment. So what I'm going to do is walk through some of the strategies that we've identified on each of those themes to kind of lay out where we think Sage potentially could head with its partners. So in terms of leveraging anchor assets, we already heard from Russell some of the activities that Sage is already doing to celebrate the Eastside's history and culture. The mural, historical marker program, it fits exactly within that. Let's tell the story of the East Side. Where we come from, what is the legacy on this East Side, so people understand what's happened and what the opportunities are. And so we have a couple of actions underneath that, but that's really just kind of celebrating who we are. Next is direction to co-locate investment near these anchor assets. So we've had a lot of money poured into facilities like this. We have new facilities like Texas Research and Technology Foundation. Let's leverage that. Let's direct the investments that Sage can make in businesses and new development in areas near these anchor assets. So we can sort of build nodes around where we already have activity occurring. And then the last one is really realizing that these anchor assets are really the partners that are needed to implement a lot of these visions. And so we can have a plan on the shelf that says, you should do X, Y, and Z, but if we don't have these partner agencies, many of you folks, helping support those actions, they're not going to be realized. So that's something I want to talk about after I'm done presenting, is really how can you be involved in the change, or some of the strategies that we've identified. In terms of the next one, investing in areas for business to locate and grow, or really investing in place. There are a few different strategies. First, we think there's opportunity to support the growth of some of the sort of neighborhood Main Street areas within the East Side. And so trying to build up, whether it's Houston Street or Commerce Street, or even smaller 1 or 2 block nodes within the east side to support businesses there. It has really been a focus of the storefront grant programs that Sage has operated, and really just continuing those efforts. And how can we support existing businesses and opportunities for new businesses in some of those vacant or underutilized buildings and lots? We think there's an opportunity and need to provide more community gathering space. I think obviously the improvements at the park right over here are an example of that, but how can we intersperse different places where folks can come together, where neighbors can come together? You know, what we've heard is, you know, we have a number of sort of vacant lots spread throughout the community. And sometimes neighbors just kind of meet up on those vacant lots or in the alley. And how do we support kind of somewhat formalizing those? We don't need to make it into some grand, huge park. Is there a way we can do some little investments, whether it's, you know, planting some trees or providing a trash can or something that can more formalize those spaces to gather and perhaps have an amenity for kids to play on or something like that. And so how do we create more of these little spots where we're already gathering and start to formalize those so we have more sort of ownership and investment in those areas? And then lastly, another thing that really struck us in our interviews with the local businesses is how some of these older buildings, commercial and industrial buildings, especially sort of on the edges of the residential neighborhoods, have really become locations for small businesses or new businesses to grow or to just start up. And we really want to use those buildings as assets to continue to support small or new businesses to kind of grow on the east side and really help to grow activity. And so how can Sage help supporting creating places and spaces for folks that are doing things and making things in the community? The last guiding theme and strategies is around this idea of ownership of change. And so really there's three things here: is how do we support entrepreneurship? That sort of dovetails on what we were just talking about. How do we build local wealth? We think what we found nationally, one of the major strategies for doing this is trying to create opportunities for ownership, whether that's home ownership, whether that's property ownership, whether that's business ownership. How do we create opportunities for local and small residents and businesses to own their assets within the community as a way to, you know, be able to take advantage of new investment and the growth of Eastside? And then how do we do that and also ensure stability within the community? And so we have some actions related to that, and some of that feeds directly more into perhaps what the city of San Antonio is doing with housing and neighborhood services and other departments like that. And so that comes back to the idea of partnerships. We know some of the strategies that we need to implement, but we're not necessarily saying Sage is the one to implement them. And so we want to have some conversations about, you know, who is the best lead for some of these ideas. So we did a fair amount of research and analysis to kind of figure out where to focus investments and activities. And I'll try to go through this quickly because it's more sort of how the sausage was made. But we wanted to just illustrate sort of the in-depth nature that we went into to kind of think about, you know, where should we invest and where should we prioritize some of these programs that Sage has or potentially could have in the future. And so we did things like map anchor institutions, we mapped community assets, whether those are parks or, you know, long-standing businesses. We looked where recent investment were located, whether those are bond programs. I don't know what I just did there. We also looked at market conditions. So where has there been recent investment in commercial buildings? Where have there been new residential units built? Where do we have properties that are vacant or underutilized? And then we started to look at things in terms of the community. So, you know, are there different portions of the east side that have more local businesses? Are there areas that have more local property owners as opposed to outside property owners? And where do we have residents that might perhaps be most vulnerable to displacement if we have new investment or growth? And so making sure that we're identifying those areas. In some of our strategy committee meetings, we kind of started to plot some circles, rough circles on map, and got feedback on those to, where should we focus? And what we developed was sort of a framework of 3 focus areas. So I mentioned this idea of Main Street neighborhood business areas. Those are shown in purple. These are areas that we think we can foster these sort of small concentrations of businesses and services and restaurants within the neighborhoods. The next one are what we're calling these large development areas. These are areas shown in pink that are more or better suited, I would say, for larger format buildings, larger grand investments. We're already seeing a lot of that activity sort of on the far east side of San Antonio, with a lot of new sort of distribution and manufacturing uses going out there. We obviously have Fort Sam and BAMC just to our north, which is a large format, very monolithic kind of economic engine. And so how do we make sure we're kind of isolating those areas where we want those larger, big changes to occur, so that we're directing attention and activity to those, and not necessarily bringing those huge changes into the areas that are more shown in blue, which are sort of the existing neighborhoods. And so some of those programs I mentioned around the idea of local home ownership, reinvestment in existing homes or businesses, really those programs fit, we think, in that sort of blue area, which is what we've called sort of the neighborhood stabilization or reinvestment area. And so we've used these focus areas or these defined areas to kind of align with some of our actions to help direct SAGE and others in terms of where do we need to place funding, where do we need to focus our programs on. So I'm almost done, and I thank you for bearing with me. What I want to do is just kind of walk through some of the specific actions, draft actions that we've identified that we'd love to hear thoughts and input on. And so organized under those 3 themes, here are a few of the immediate, short-term, and long-term actions. And what I want to sort of stress here is what we've laid out is potentially, like I said, a framework for how SAGE could perhaps grow some of its services and its efforts over time. Realizing now that we only have limited funding opportunities, limited staff capacity, and so what we tried to lay out are the immediate actions are ones that we think that can happen pretty quickly, and don't take a lot of resources or investment. The shorter term actions are more ones that might be able to occur over one to 3 or 4 years, perhaps, something that SAGE could perhaps grow into or help partners create in that time frame. And then long-term actions are ones that ones to consider that potentially we could grow towards, but not necessarily a promise that we're going to do it, but more so a strategy we think that could work over the long term if we're able to build that capacity. So in terms of leveraging anchor assets, this first sort of guiding theme, the first immediate action is really the direction for SAGE to focus its programs in these targeted areas that I just went over, and start to align those investment tools, whether it's TERS funding or others, that they have for different programs within these prioritized areas based on the analysis that we've done. And one of the short-term actions that really came out of our strategy committee was the formation of this partnership action committee. And so that discussion was really great with a lot of sort of the committee members, and realizing that we have a lot of great assets and institutions on the east side, but they don't tend to talk a lot about what they're doing. And so if SAGE can create the framework or the meeting for these partnerships to sort of, or these partners that come together and start to form different strategies, whether SAGE is involved or not, I think it doesn't matter. It's really trying to make sure that we have this ongoing engagement in these partners, because a lot of times, we're all busy people, our heads sort of buried, we have the blinders on in terms of just trying to complete the work that we've been tasked with. And sometimes we miss things that our friends are doing. And so this regular meeting of partners is something that we think can help spur some co-investment, some partnering in different programs. And there are some other strategies on here as well. We already talked about the mural or the historical marker program that SAGE is implementing now, and we think that there's really opportunity to grow that in different forms, whether it's arts in public places or different expressions of history or culture. is something to help, like I said, tell the story of the East Side. And so something that could occur over the short term. And then also, hosting and sponsoring events, things like Black Restaurant Week. That's an amazing, awesome idea. It's something that Sage can help focus in terms of different efforts just on the East Side. So whether it's, a certain night of the week promoting one local business district within the East Side or certain types of businesses. So we're building more awareness of what's here currently and the opportunities for folks throughout the city to come enjoy. And then long term, these partners that we talked about, or we talked with in terms of the strategy committee, really started to identify some of these areas in terms of workforce development or business creation that are really opportunities on the East Side. So the first one is bioscience. I'm not sure how many people are aware of the Texas Research and Technology Foundation. They're on Cherry Street. They're a really great organization that is helping to spur and grow bioscience businesses. And there's really some amazing technology and innovations that are occurring there now. And they have really ambitious plans to kind of grow the connection between military, health, and medicine on their campus. And they've already started doing some outreach into local schools, but there's opportunity to grow more opportunities for local residents to get exposure and then ultimately perhaps training for working in some of these bioscience jobs, whether it's as a technician or a nurse or a researcher, what have you. And so the earlier they start to expose residents, so kids in the neighborhood, to these opportunities, there's a greater chance that they'll grow an interest in that long term. And so we think that specific cluster, that specific industry is something that could be grown on, built upon. Entrepreneurship, obviously, we've talked a lot about creating new businesses. There's a lot of opportunity related to food-based businesses, whether that's new restaurants or companies that are actually manufacturing food, like coffee or other goods that can sold outside of the neighborhood. I guess there's a commercial kitchen in Austin that can potentially be an asset to help support some entrepreneurs. And that's the thing that we kind of learned, is there's a lot of these assets that we didn't know about in some of these institutions, and how do we make sure we leverage those correctly. And then we also heard a lot about the value of teaching technology skills at an early age and how important more and more that is becoming. And so what opportunities can Sage and other partners try to create for younger residents of the East Side to get exposure to and training in. So this is sort of the nerdy stuff for Sage, but we've created an action matrix that starts to lay out the timing and locations and funding for all of these to help guide efforts over the coming years. The next area is in terms of investment in place. So immediate actions, like again aligning things like the storefront grant program that they currently operate with the Main Street business areas that we've identified. Some of the shorter term actions, one of the funders for our study, but also a lot of Sage's efforts, is the Intercity Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. And that's coming up on the need to renew it in the next few years. And so there's an opportunity there to try to rethink where that's located or how those funds are used. And Sage really advocating for how those TERS funds can be used best on the East Side. So something that over the next couple of years really will be a big focus area, I think. We also think there's opportunity for Sage to provide some guidance to clusters of businesses around promoting and investing in place. And so what we found, some of these small neighborhoods areas work best when the different businesses and property owners actually work together and kind of create their own vision and plan and invest in themselves and promote themselves. And so how can Sage encourage those types of activities throughout the East Side? Another short-term action to highlight, the Office of Historic Preservation actually has a really great program that they operate around vacant buildings. They actually do proactive outreach to vacant buildings that may have potential code infractions to help support those building and property owners to address code issues before they are enforced on. And it's really a great way to build an inventory of the potential buildings and lots that could be reused or repurposed. And so expanding the focus of that program with Sage's help to the entire Eastside can help create this inventory of potential spaces and buildings that might be able to attract some reinvestment, whether it's being able to sell it to a new family to live there, or helping the existing owner access funds to reinvest in their home, or creating, taking an old commercial building and allowing a new business to locate within it. And so we think there's opportunity for a partnership there. And then there's some longer term actions that we've identified around perhaps providing funding for those small places that community can gather, starting to become more engaged in the bond process, and Sage leading efforts on the east side to help identify the projects the community wants and going and advocating to city council for those, and really trying to build support for those. We have other entities within San Antonio that do this, whether it's Centro or some of the large redevelopment areas. They're very proactive in trying to seek funding from the bond for improvements that are wanted in their area. And so Sage can really serve as that sort of community voice that could perhaps have more prominence or sway with decisions that are made around the bond program. And then there's some strategies around creating new spaces for businesses to grow and locate into. And I'm happy to get more into these in the discussion if people want to. I'm trying not to throw way too much at you. I've already presented a lot. And the last category here is this idea of ownership of change. And so Sage has this Grow Eastside Fund that helps invest and provide revolving loans to small or existing businesses on the east side. And how can we expand the reach of that program as well as the funding for that? Short-term actions are around some more of these sort of ownership issues. And so Sage already offers some home owner services. Lindsay did a good presentation on existing funding that they're trying to allocate. And so we have strategies around trying to expand that, ensure that we have ownership of property and homes from local residents. And then how can we create some more small-scale investment opportunities? I think COVID really illustrated the need for businesses to adapt quickly. And we saw some cool things in San Antonio and other communities around just really small investments that could be made to a business or a storefront to help them adapt, whether that's creating a to-go window for a restaurant so that previously didn't do to-go orders. And those sort of small-scale investments, how can we create opportunities for those that are pretty easy to access and pretty quick to access, so when we have shocks, and hopefully knock on wood we don't have something as huge as a pandemic, but when we have shocks, how can we help businesses be more nimble? And then long-term actions, some really impactful things that we think could create a lot of benefits for the community are the creation of an entrepreneurship center. And so a central place on the east side for folks to come and access resources, whether it's amenities like a commercial kitchen or other sort of support infrastructure, is something that potentially Sage could look to trying to create in the future. And then another idea that was also, I think, in the forthcoming East Side Community Area Plan, but something I think the city is considering as well, is this idea of community land trust. I mentioned a lot of the vacant properties that are throughout the neighborhood. Is there a way that we can get an East Side-based nonprofit to start to buy some of those properties and make sure that the new homes or new businesses that are created there are creating opportunities for existing residents to live in or to start a business in? And so how can we start to, as a community, create ownership of the assets that we have And we think this land trust is a tool that could fund and really drive a lot of that local ownership. So I just presented a lot of stuff. So I appreciate your willingness to listen and really want to spend the rest of the time having a discussion about some of these ideas and really sort of expressing to you, we can only take these ideas so far. It's really trying to provide a framework for some stuff that the community can grab onto and really take on as their own. So I'd love to hear in terms of what ideas we presented you like, and perhaps something we should really focus on, or things perhaps we didn't mention that you think might have legs as well. So with that, I think there's microphones set up over there. That might be the easiest way. Or we could have the microphone sort of float to different folks.
Yes, we've got two options. One is, well, maybe not this one. We have a microphone over here, and we can pass a microphone out around.
I think Russell also has cards, so if you want to write a question down or a comment down.
Do we have some
share
questions
those.
to begin?
I'm going to get some water. Wow.
So the first question we have is, has Sage given much thought or consideration to establishing a cultural or historic district designation? And this is a question to Sage. We have...
Hello? I think I can project a little bit. Okay. Yes, that is a very good question, and it's a very important one. This is why we advocated for the historical markers program, and which is another project that was funded through the TERS board. And so what that's going to do for us, we're not just going to have the markers, but we're going to create, and we are looking to partner with SACAM in developing a historical trail, if you will, through the East Side, and also work with the Visit San Antonio. So folk come to San Antonio, they should be able to have that opportunity to do tours through the East Side. SACAM has got a program that they're about to work on, is the cemetery program, and I think that's a great one, and we want to be a part of that. And so, yes, to that question.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, there are a few designated neighborhoods on the east side currently too, so there's a history of creating those.
So I'm sorry, part of that is working with neighborhood associations and other groups so that they can designate the neighborhood as conservation districts or historic districts. So is that already the case? So I'm not familiar with some of the East Side neighborhoods, but if it's not, is that something that SAGE or another group is proactively working with neighborhood groups to get them registered?
That's a very good question.
I don't think SAGE is currently, and I know the Office of Historic Preservation is open to that, but I don't think there's anybody actively doing that I'm aware of. Perhaps there is. That is a role, perhaps, that direction we could provide in our plan, and perhaps a role that SAGE could take on as well. So it's a great comment, suggestion.
We know the planning department at the city is also meeting with neighborhoods and discussing future plans and opportunities. And we know that there are some neighborhoods like Dinglewood, Denver Heights, some of the more established and historic neighborhoods on the east side. So that's a very good piece, and we wouldn't have a problem with working with those neighborhoods, especially those that need to, are looking to get official designations.
That's a great point. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, so the city is, this SA Tomorrow effort is creating community area plans throughout the city. So there's an East Side community plan that's in draft form right now. I'll just stop using this. Within each of the community planning areas, there are neighborhood profiles, which the planning department is reaching out to individual neighborhoods to create, 1 to 2 page profiles in these plans. And within those profiles are the opportunities for residents to express the desire for things like a historical designation. I believe that there's an administrative draft going out for the Eastside plan pretty soon that has a lot of the strategies and actions, things like that. And as well, there's 5 or 6 ongoing planning efforts currently right now, including the Far East, which is just east of here. Fort Sam Regional Center is also creating a plan. And so there's planning efforts that touch the overall study area that are going on right now. Dave, who's here from the planning department, can direct you to all things SA Tomorrow if you're interested. And that's something we've been involved in, not leading, but involved in. So there are a lot of opportunities for individual neighborhoods, and I'm glad Russell mentioned that because I should have remembered that. Those profiles are meant to do exactly that, to help provide neighborhood-specific actions that can be implemented. But at the end of the day, they do need champions. And if the neighborhood association isn't able or willing to carry the torch for that, perhaps SAGE can serve in that role in some way. So, great suggestion.
Quick question, but with all the redistricting and rezoning and different lines, maybe an elementary question, but geographically, what is considered the east side now?
I guess whatever you want it to be, but.
No. Because the reason why I'm saying, because when you have entrepreneurship programs like that, depending on how geographically the east side, you consider the east side, what would that be located? So it's kind of a dual question.
Yeah. What the thing that we've done at SAGE, we consider the east side being all of District 2 and a sliver of District 3. And we know that the promise zone that was designated through the federal government is strictly east side. And that's all within that area that I just mentioned.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking, because being a long time, well, I've lived my whole life on the east side, and east side used to be from downtown San Antonio, maybe all the way up to W.W. White and somewhere across there. But now, like you said, are we considering all District 2 consider east side? So that means Gibbs Fall Road, Walsham area, all those areas as well?
Right. SAGE has, for years, we've just focused on the promise zone area. Mm-hmm. So now we know the promise zone designation will end January of 2024. Yeah. So now we need to focus on a broader area, which is why we deal with District 2 quite a bit. So the entire District 2, which covers the east side. Mm-hmm. And then there's a little piece of District 3 that there are those who consider east side. So we just included that in the service area that SAGE is focused on.
Okay, because as far as like my residents and as far as my business is concerned, I'm up on W.W. White area, and this area that we consider the east side where we are right now, and in that area, our needs are so much different than what's happening in northeast of Walls. Our needs are so much different.
Oh, exactly, and we do recognize that, and which is why, and I mentioned that in the Promise Zone Executive Committee meeting the other day, that when the designation was done several years ago, well, we knew what the east side, that Promise Zone area, what was going on, and what the statistics were. Well, the statistics have improved. However, the people who was there at that time, have they improved? Right. And so now our focus has to shift a little bit to really dig deep to see what really has occurred, and then let's work toward making those improvements. Okay, we got, I don't have time, but we got a lot of great questions here. Let's see, here's one says, does SAGE have any pull to save existing businesses on the east side affected by road construction on New Brunswick? They're dying. Well, actually the city has created a program to support those businesses in the construction zone. And We have visited the businesses in that zone, New Brunswick, sharing with them the information on how they could go about applying. We've also assisted persons with doing the application, so there is support there. And so I think that has the deadline passed for that? That was today at 5 p.m. The city did a canvassing, we did canvassing, and so I truly hope that all of the businesses that was affected by the construction took the opportunity to at least complete the application. Okay, that was a question in back. I'm gonna go back and forth with
Right here.
Yes.
My family lives on the east side, south side, west side. So what I'm trying to understand, so you're saying that these homes that they have, that you'll have funding for them to basically be remodeled. And I wanted to know if that was so, is that part of the block grant? The CDBG?
Yeah, so the city has existing programs of funding that allocate CDBG funding for home renovation and repairs for qualifying homes. So usually it's an income target or they're senior-oriented programs. And so what we're suggesting is how can we expand the reach of that in terms of who qualifies and make sure that there's a little more comprehensive coverage on the east side. While the city's program is citywide and it's focused, and they do some targeting as well, but how can SAGE help bolster those, whether it's funding or outreach or qualification eligibility to a broader set of East Side homeowners. And I think some of the things that we've identified that there's a missing need for are help with real estate advisory issues. So how much is my home worth? You know, what options do I have for different, whether it's a mortgage or addressing things like missing payments, and also title clearance. As folks pass away, unfortunately, there's often a lot of issues with the inheriting family member being able to do something with that property. And so some of those services we think needs to be more availability and more funding invested in those on the east side.
Well, another question is that block grant, the CDBG. I was wondering, because the east side has been like the most neglected, that grant is especially meant for the east side. You can look it up in Google if you want. CDBG grant. It's for small businesses to get that money. It was for homes to be remodeled. I don't see this. All I see is gentrification. So I just wanted to find out if you had an answer for me, because it's something I've been worrying about. I've been just trying to figure it out because my aunt is in a property that now she may need to sell her home. I've been here, and I'm 59 years old. I've been here all my life. And I've lived on all parts of town. But I can say this, that since this funding is here, why aren't they utilizing it where it needs to be? Because if you read the grant, it states it's for the most underprivileged and underserved.
Yeah.
They don't even have a restaurant on the east side. They don't even have stores on the east side. We have to go to other districts to basically buy things that are needed. So I'm just asking because it's something that you guys, if you want to represent the east side, this is something that you need to take forward. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know how or where you got the logistics from, but the people that I speak to are telling me different. So I really appreciate you if you can answer that question, sir.
Yeah, so I can't speak for the city's Housing Neighborhood Services Department in terms of how they allocate it. My basic understanding is that they do try to target specific areas like the East Side for the funding. That department has a recently adopted strategic housing and investment plan, implementation plan, which folks.
I'm David Kirkowite with the City of San Antonio. I work in the Neighborhood Housing Services Department. So interesting that you brought that up. I would suggest that we do have a housing assistance program through NHSD that's funded through various sources, CDBG, HUD, Home, some other sources as well that's there. sa.gov/NHSD has that resource there. We can click on that. Look for programs that are available for housing assistance, for rehab, or owner occupied. There's different levels that can work out through that.
Right.
So use your particular circumstance and take a look at that, Eric. Take a look at that and what it would apply for you in your circumstance. It is available, it's out there. We're fully staffed to help out residents and homeowners go through this program, so we'd love to be able to have that. I just want to throw this out there to Russell. We haven't talked about it at all, but if we need to do some sort of town hall as well, through NHSD, through Sage, if Sage wants to host that type of stuff,
Love it.
I think I can get some traction in my department to have some
Absolutely.
folks come in there to do that type of stuff.
Love it. Yeah, we want to do anything that's going to, and we'll recognize you, and we're going to go as long as we can. But yes, we want to do anything that we can to improve life on the East Side for families, for individuals, for businesses. So everything that we can do and every opportunity we get, we definitely do that. So we'll definitely look at a town hall to deal with that. And one of the things we can do now with the Texas HALF program that we are administering, if you're having a problem and you own that home, please just come to us. Let us help you. Don't you decide that you don't qualify. Let us help you and give you some direction and guidance on it. We also are working with the legal department with the Texas HALF program for those who are having issues with succession. You living in the house that was owned by your grandmother. So that puts you in a bad posture because you don't own it. So you can't get some certain things. So we want to help with that process also. So please come to us. Let us give you some guidance and direction. And we know that there's not one-stop shop, but there's many places that we can go to and check to see what's available, and we want to do that to help you. Let me see, is a question here. What does community voice look like for SAGE? How will it shape or change strategies or the implementation of strategies? So the community voice is like what's happening right now. We conduct these town halls. We've been doing town halls for a number of years, and we enjoy hearing from the community because that helps to shape what directions we want to go with. The reason that we even got to this point is because of community involvement and input about what was happening and that we needed to take a look at this. And so, yeah, that's the voice is the people. The people come and let us know what your thoughts are and we want to deal with it. Right here, ma'am?
Yes, to expand on her point regarding not having certain stores having to leave the East Side to go, for example, grocery shopping, because this HEB refuses to get a lot of the things. And I've spoken to the management there, and I've spoken to the produce. We don't have a meat market, we don't have a fish market, we barely got a deli. There's just things that you can't even get at this grocery store, and HEB refuses. Can SAGE help? I mean, is there like an outreach for a new grocery store to come into the neighborhood? Maybe like a Trader Joe's? Because they're not concerned with that store.
Well, we definitely understand that, and we have had our concerns about it. But we want to take your concerns, and since you brought that up, we know that the East Side has been considered a food desert. And so we are working on things, and we're working with HEB as one of the main anchors in this entire city. But HEB does not have to be the only option and opportunity. So as we study this research that has been done, that's going to help us through our economic development team to go out and present to various outlets that may be interested in locating to San Antonio. So it's not going to be an overnight fix, but it's definitely something that we see and want to work toward. Okay. Well, you can go ahead and then we'll get this lady.
I assume San Antonio has a commercial real estate advisory group that helps, that works with the city, that works with economic development consultants like you to say, we've talked to HEB, we've talked to McDonald's, this is a gap, it needs their demos. There's only X number of sites that certain retailers will even go, right? Because of drive-through requirements, site requirements, et cetera, right? What do those conversations look like? Because that's where you can monetize some of the land, where you could have a CBA or other things in place to be able to have local hiring and other things.
Yeah.
So what's the feedback?
Well, in terms of specifically, in terms of the East Side, I can't speak to the feedback that the Economic Development Department may have had. I do know in the East Side plan, that SA Tomorrow East Side plan, the addressing food access is one of the strategies or strategy areas that there are planned strategies for, including attracting another grocery store. In terms of this plan, some of these larger development format or larger format development areas are really the places that we think have the best opportunity to attract some of those larger format things, like a larger format grocery store. Not to say that in some of our embedded neighborhood areas we might be able to get a butcher or some small scale grocer, but that's kind of the goal of what we're trying to do, is identify areas that are best suited for those types of opportunities. And so that SAGE can go to the Economic Development Department and say, this is what we're hearing from the community that wants, these are the areas we think are best suited, can you help us with that attraction? Another thing we've heard about the East Side is access to healthcare as well, and a healthcare facility lacking on the East Side. And so that's been a focus as well in that East Side plan, and something that we think these larger pink areas are best suited for trying to attract those kind of anchors, because they have the amenities, whether it's interstate access, major road access, that are best suited for those types of uses.
Okay, ma'am?
Yes, I have an outside voice. Y'all talk about technology. Are we working with the schools, the feeder schools that feed into Sam Houston? Because Sam Houston has a large technology program.
There has been, so there was representation from the school district on our strategy committee, and a lot of discussion about the need to integrate technology training, specifically in exposure to residents of the East Side. Part of the recommendation we have is the school districts being one of those partners that need to be in that sort of action committee, and so that they are connected to some of these ideas and hearing about these opportunities. St. Philip's College is another entity that is key in that, and they were on our strategy committee and are included in. I also would mention TRTF, I mentioned, they're doing some proactive outreach to the schools as well around science or bioscience technology. And so there is a lack of sort of formal programs though, which are needed. And I think that's an area where this partnership committee can really start to create those formal programs.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to extend, speaking of formal agreements and partnerships, community benefit agreements, I think, in my personal opinion, would be great vehicles to formalize those, right? They're in writing, they're legally binding, they're legally enforceable. So to me, that's really a vehicle to address a lot of these concerns all in one and for the foreseeable future. So not so much a question, but just a suggestion to consider.
Yeah, so for folks not familiar, community benefit agreement is an agreement between whether it's a large business or developer with the community directly, where they promise to provide or build certain assets for the community as part of sort of getting support for a project. A lot of times we find that in community, or it's an emerging trend really, but some cities, when they offer economic development incentives, will require, encourage this community benefit agreement as a big part of that incentive. So if you're getting an incentive from the city, then there's the onus on you to reach out to the community and try to negotiate some of these benefits that would most directly support that neighborhood. So I don't know if economic development has integrated CBAs directly into their incentive policy. I know we did support the economic development department a few years ago in terms of trying to create more sort of targeted incentive programs around things where we could tie the incentive to the creation of things like a quality job, which is a job that provides benefits and a living wage and other attributes. And so there are elements, I think, already going on in the city, but I can't directly speak for the city. But I know that there is the emergence of that here, and then also nationally that's becoming more and more of a best practice. So something that we consider integrating here as well.
You know, the approach must be holistic. We've got to look at every piece of it, which is why we believe this study helps us with that, and we're going to need every aspect of the community to be involved and help participate. We don't want another plan that we just set on the shelf and just gets full of dust. We want to take this plan and work with community leaders, and then we can truly take the strategies even further so that we can now look at what's the next steps, what are the things that we need to do to really bring some of this into fruition. Dr. Dick.
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our office. And thank you all for being
She
here.
has an outside voice.
One question I wanted to just ask is in visiting with Sage, one of the key things that we actually need advocacy, unified advocacy for, is actually workforce development in general, but in specific as we're approaching the summer months, specifically for our young people. With all the money that got passed for workforce development, we did not actually allocate any money for youth, for workforce for youth. I mean, being such a large city, I don't know how we did that. We voted in all that money and did not allocate any for that. But you all, I'm sharing with you, again, I want to make apologies for, I want to just all of us to ask to take a quick moment of silence because we just lost, we had a shooting right here in Walters, right up the street, and we've lost another individual in the community to gun violence. It is getting ridiculous, and I am telling you all, the young people who are involved in this, if we can give them other things to do, they would not be out trying to do the hustle and live that life. If they have no options, it really is about poverty and intergenerational poverty. So I am asking, can we all please come together to really advocate, especially for this summer, so it will not be a long, hot summer, for us to be able to have and work with the city to get funds allocated. We will, Westcare, we will provide space, we will partner with you, we'll do whatever we got to do. Last year we employed, how many young people? About 45 young people, and I will tell you all, because of that, the juvenile crime rate dropped. Because they could realize they could work and do, they were junior coaches here, working with other kids. They could actually earn money and be safe in doing so. And they chose that rather than be in the life of crime. So please, please help us do that. That is absolutely necessary for us to do and a key role for SAGE to play.
And thank you, and I think that's really important to me. And I think just leading the effort of getting community together, to get the pastors together with us, because the young people that may not, whether they go into the church or not, their families probably attend that church, and so we need to work with the pastors, we need to work with other community leaders, we need to work with the city, also to make certain we have that funding. It has to be a holistic approach. We cannot just look at one group to try to handle it or this group. It has to be all of us working together, because if we don't, you don't want to know the other side. We got to deal with it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I absolutely agree, and I have a question. I'm just curious on the committees, if there was any ideas or strategies that were prioritized specific to the area of technological advancement, which is key addressing digital divide, if there's any opportunities to bring access to internet, Wi-Fi devices for learning purposes and growth.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that, and I mean, honestly, there's direction there, but it's very high level. And so, with the more sort of specific recommendations that you may have, we'd love to hear and try to integrate, because I think that was a huge issue that was brought up, and a real opportunity. The access to technology, and I'll let you speak to it, because you don't know.
No, I mean, just, my name is David Davis, I'm with Ms. Beverly. I've got a big voice in my phone. It's confrontational, it's combative. Sorry. So we know that rack-based managed technology, I come from the world of technologies. I was the mergers and acquisitions of technology organizations from Silicon Valley, Denver, where the organization is from, all the way down to New York City, and come from the world of executive management consulting. Ms. Beverly gave me an opportunity with WestCare and Ella Austin, and I'm very grateful, because Eastside is also my community. This is where I came up, and it's sad for me to hear that there are so many of us that actually take the gifts that we've been given, and we leave the Eastside and then live in the places like Stone Oak and New Braunfels and wherever you want to consider it to be affluent. So to bring it back is fantastic. Sorry for that byline. Having said that, getting back to the situation at hand, we know Rackspace Managed Services, which is an organization that I started off with back in early 2000s, is leaving the Northeast side. And they're vacating out of the Windsor Park Mall, which formerly was the Windsor Park Mall, which created a huge vacuum of all of the not funding, but the salaries where the people have lived on the Northeast and East side. There are conversations that is being taken place, even currently today, where we are looking to create that technological infrastructure, because we do know that there are organizations that are really trying to create these niche areas for the Black and brown community to get into, which is cybersecurity and program coding. We want to actually not go just depth in those areas, but we want to create a breadth of area considered to be what they call technology engineering and technology architecture, which actually provides the ability for individuals to go into those niche areas of cybersecurity once they understand the technology infrastructure. So there are conversations that is taking place.
Because we have had some funded programs where individuals on the east side receive A+ certifications,
and they're just hanging on the wall. They did not get connected to actual jobs. And so, there needs to be a pipeline to some jobs. But then also, I'm thinking about our children, our future, who do not have internet to do homework, devices, that connection to access, basic, that's in other homes that are not here and families here.
We can make sure we have digital
hubs. Yeah.
in place.
And there are a number of things that needs to happen, and we recognize that is one of them. And in fact, we know that the city has, through the ARPA program, will be doing some things for the digital divide, and the East Side area is one of those areas that's an issue. It doesn't matter. You can have a laptop, but if you don't have no internet, it does you no good. So those are things that must be done. And Sage, we are committed to partnering because we're a nonprofit. So we get our funding from writing grants, from kind people that donate to us, but we don't just have a product that we have money just coming in like that. So we continue to write grants like we're able to do with the Texas HAP program. We wrote a grant to be able to do that, and we will continue to do that, but input like we're getting tonight is helping us to develop what we need to get done. And now, we know that we said that we would go until 7:30. It's 7:30 now. There's 3 hands up.
I got one last thing.
Hold on. If you've already spoken, I'm gonna let those.
Mine is really quick. I just had a question.
Just a moment, man. Just a moment. I'm gonna address the 3 plus Pastor. He has not spoken. I'm gonna give him an opportunity to make his comment or question, and then we'll hear these others, and then we're gonna have to, we don't wanna.
Okay, I got 2 things. Dealing with yours, the city has some good programs as it relates to renovation, modernization, and so forth. I see 2 problems with it as far as the east side. One, getting the information out so that the homeowners know what's available. Number 2, that income line is, I think, is just too low. When you talk about, you can't make any more than maybe 43,000 and for a household of 3 or 4, I mean, that's too low. The city needs to address that. The other thing concerning kids with computers but yet not having access, there was something in the city, we call it hub, but they were gonna have spots located throughout the east side where within a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles of that site, where in their homes, they were supposed to be able to connect to the internet until the infrastructure was in place. I don't know what happened to that program, but you might want to look into that, and I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. I really would like to continue this on, but I really want to be respectful to everybody's time who we said we'd be here from 6 to 7:30. We have some other questions that we didn't get to, but I just want to deal with one. There was one regarding sports bars near AT&T Center. That's going to definitely be something that our economic development team is working with the Spurs, with the city, with the county about that, because one of the issues is landlocked around the AT&T Center. And so when it was built there, well, unfortunately, everything was not considered at that time. Like, I used to live in Dallas. They considered that. The American Airlines Center just has all kind of great things around it. But that was a part of the plan at the beginning. And so I wasn't here when the AT&T Center was put together. And so it's over there. You've got Coca-Cola, you've got the golf course. You really don't have areas around it where you could have some development. So that's something we really have to work on. And again, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. We may not have gotten to your question. If you want to stick around and ask your question, we'll definitely be here to try and answer your question. But I want to say to everybody, thank you so much for coming out, for listening what has transpired through the study. I thank Matt for the work that his team has done. And now we got to go to the next phase. What do we do with this? Do we just put it on the shelf? Or we make something happen with it? And so we have your information. We're going to be sending out notices. Please, if you get a notice, come out and help us in developing the best strategy in moving forward. Yes, Mike. Okay.
Hi. My husband's family has been a member of this community since 1971. They were the first Hispanic family in this area. I have been here since 1990 when I was 16 and married my husband. My question for you is, what is being done to actually reach out to the owners? There's so many properties that are rent properties. What are we doing to reach out to the owners to let them know of these services that are available, like what you're referring to? How do they know? What's being put out there for them, for us, to know that these are here and what's being put out there for us to know how to get involved with you, any of you.
Yeah, so, I mean, Sage does a tremendous amount of outreach, so that's one avenue. I mentioned that the Historic Preservation Department has that vacant building program. That's, the expansion of that is another way to create resources for folks to actually directly reach out to our property owners that may have potential issues. And that's the beauty of that program, is it's proactive in its outreach. And so how can we find funding to expand that to the larger East Side is something that fits directly in that. To supplement what Sage already does in terms of bringing the community together. And then I think there's other avenues as well. But that's one example of that we've identified of how to expand that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And this is a point that we've made to the city and to others, that a lot of the funding is made available to homeowners that live in that home. But we know that a lot of our residents are renters. And so there's not a program to deal with those homes that have renters. So that's an area that we've got to work on, and work on the city and other areas with funding.
I think some of the programs are based on the tenant's income. I just looked at a property on Houston over here. They got a whole new central air, heat, everything based off of the tenant's income.
Oh,
The landlord did. This was 2 years ago, but I think some of those programs are different.
Okay, so thank you all so much for your time. We're gonna dismiss now, but if you have a question that anything that you feel hadn't been answered for you tonight, just come up and we'll try to deal with it. Thank you all so much for being here tonight.